Ladies and gentlemen, please give a very warm Celtic welcome to our very own Celtic goalkeeper, Super Joe Hart.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
You can score penalties. I saw one there.
Yeah, no comment.
Before we talk about that and all the other stuff that we're going to talk about, Joe, just a word about this kind of reception and the Celtic support that you've had just in general. You announced your retirement early because you wanted to then concentrate on the football, and it gave us a chance to organise a night like this. What does it mean to see all these hundreds of Celtic supporters coming out on a night like this to celebrate you?
Truly humbled. This place is very special to me and something that I've absolutely loved being a part of, and yeah.
Let's talk about what you like to talk about, the football. Then let's start right here because yesterday that was some game. How did you feel when? Well, there's the moment where you saved that penalty from Killian Phillips. Understated celebration. Take us through what you were feeling at that moment.
Yeah, I realised obviously it's an important moment for us, and it was an important moment for me. But I know Kel, who plays for Aberdeen, and someone's got to be a loser. And I was also aware that obviously I'd missed the penalty to put us in that position, so I'm not someone who lives with many regrets, but I would have liked to have not put the boys under the pressure that I did. So I was really willing. I thought the penalties were exceptional, and especially the boys who did it after mine. I think it was Ali and Tomo to give me the opportunity to try and pay the boys back, and this club needs to be in a final, and I put that on the line. So I was very aware of that. That's why I was.
I've since learned, I think, that Cameron Carter-Vickers was next in line to take one, so I think he's especially pleased that you saved that.
I think him and Greg were having a scrap, and unfortunately, about who was next, but. Like I said, I thought the boys did. It was just a mental game. When it was a lot of fun to play in, but at the same time, it was quite stressful, and we just couldn't put it to bed. And like I say, credit to Aberdeen, but I'm just glad that we got over the line, and we've got that date on the 25th of May that we can have a rumble with them, can't we?
Yeah, well. It is a date that is a very important date in Celtic's history. It's the date where Celtic won the European Cup back in 1967. And, of course, it will be a Glasgow Derby Cup final. And fingers crossed, injuries aside, that your last game as a professional will be a Glasgow Derby Scottish Cup final. It's quite a way to go out.
Yeah, it really is. And I didn't really think about these things. I just thought, I'm like anyone through the season. I'm just doing my best to keep my place. It's not been a perfect season. We've been doing our best and trying to put ourselves in the best situation. But to potentially have this, all being well, form, injury, for that to be my final game, it's exactly where I want to be, exactly the stage that I want to be at. And I'd love to be stood there at the end of it with some good things to say.
It feels a bit like a Joe Hart Cup final day with it being a Manchester derby down south that day as well.
Yeah, I know, I saw that before. All those, very uncomfortable about stuff like that. But I'm looking forward to it as a professional. It's an amazing game to play in. 50-50 split at Hampden. It's a proper game of football and something that I'm looking forward to.
Well, we're here tonight to talk to you about your career and speak to people. Got some great special guests on the stage, some people who we've spoken to that we'll see on the screen as well, to look back on a fantastic career. But let me ask you first of all about your decision to announce your retirement a few weeks ago while there was still some time left to play. Was it a decision that was a spur of the moment thing for you, or had you always had it in the back of your head that this is how and this is when you were going to do it?
It wasn't always in the back of my head. It was something that I was aware that my contract was running down with Celtic. I was aware that there was conversations potentially above my head about whether do we keep Joe on? Do we look younger? Do we look to improve the position? And I spoke with my family and my wife, and we just decided. Well, I decided ultimately, but we're a team that this was just the right time. I wanted to finish somewhere where I felt the love, where I loved being. I didn't want the club to be in a position where they weren't quite sure. I didn't know where they stood. We never had a contract conversation, and I wasn't looking to have one. And I knew that my family have been great, but we decided that with the age of my children, they were going to stay down south with school and stuff like that. They'd been moved around too much, and I was going to journey between the two, and we'd do our best to make it work. And so I don't think I could stay any longer, even if, like I say, I don't know whether that would have been an option. And I don't want to play anywhere else. There's nowhere else that I want to play. There's nothing else appeals to me in football other than what I'm doing now. So I thought, why not take this opportunity to finish strong and finish happy? I'm well aware that in football that's not necessarily given to you. So that was the thinking behind the decision. And saying it early, I just wanted to take away any speculation, any pressure, potentially, dodging press conferences, not being able to answer honestly. I'm not comfortable with it. I didn't want to put Brendan under that. He's been superb to me, and I just felt like it was the best way for everyone to move on in terms of the goalkeeping position with freedom, and we can just get on with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was your birthday on Friday. You turned 37. Happy birthday. But let me take you back to those very early days of the young Joe Hart. You were born in Shrewsbury, your local town, your local club in Shropshire. Take us back to the early days, family life. Shropshire doesn't seem to me like a big footballing county. What was life like for the young Joe Hart in those early Shrewsbury days?
I was just pretty naive, very happy. Grew up in a loving home, sister, mom and dad. Nothing to really report in terms of a headline. Just a happy place. Do your schoolwork and you'll get to play sport. That was the deal that I had with the old man, and I did my best to adhere to it. I didn't want to do the schoolwork, but do your schoolwork. Any kids in here, obviously. but yeah. I just wanted to play football, cricket, anything that was thrown my way. And like you say, Shrewsbury's a small place. There's no big teams in and around me. Probably the biggest is Wolverhampton, 45 minutes away, Birmingham, and Shrewsbury. I was in and out of their academy and dotted around here, there. I liked playing outfield. And then when I was about 14, I started to play for Shrewsbury properly. And they elevated me very quickly. I was playing under 18s football. I was on the bench when I was 15. Not necessarily through being a breakthrough talent, but I think they just had trust in me, and the resources just aren't there in League Two conference football. So I was able to really progress and start playing some men's football very early. You
mentioned cricket there, and am I right in thinking that you showed great aptitude in both sports? There you are, there as a young cricketer. If it hadn't been football, you could have been playing in the Ashes.
Look at that. That was before I realised in the press you can say no. When people ask you to do it, you can actually say no. I played it and loved it. I played to a decent standard. Whether I would have been a professional cricketer, I don't know. But certainly that path was an opportunity, and I could have played academy cricket or academy football. But I spoke with my dad and spoke with we decided that football, I was already involved with the first team at 16 when it was end of school, that they'd give me that opportunity, and I did actually wangle into my contract that I could still play cricket. I don't know. I just wasn't thinking back then. I thought that everything was fun and
What were you cricket? Were you a bowler or a bat?
Left-arm bowler. Quick as
a left-arm bowler?
Left-arm bowler, yeah.
So how come we never see you throw the ball out with your left arm?
So, please...
Maybe you should.
So left arm, I'm talking about footballs and cricket balls, just to clear that up. So big balls... I throw.
You needed them yesterday.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And little balls, being cricket balls, I throw better and longer on my left. So okay. I don't know why. It's just that's how my mechanics work.
Okay. A lot of kids in here will be young sports boys and girls, and of course you mentioned schoolwork as well. Was it important to your parents back then that you concentrated on schoolwork? Did you show an aptitude in your education academically, that there was a kind of a pressure perhaps from your parents to get a proper career, a proper job?
Yeah, look, I think the more I look at it now, I think it was just trying to ground me or kind of make me a better person, someone who realizes that to get what you want, you also have to do things that don't necessarily, the world doesn't revolve around you. Whether I could have been anything academically, I really don't know, because my mind was never going down that route. I was always trying to do as much sport as I could. And obviously I kicked back like any kid does, but I realize now that was one of the main reasons that why I was being asked to do it, not because necessarily to plan for the future, and if football doesn't work, you never know, because we never were lining me up to be anything. It was just trying to make me the best person I could possibly be. And hopefully they did a decent job.
You certainly have. Before we fill the seat next to you, what advice would you have to any young child here who is hoping to kind of emulate you in sport? What were the things that you did back then that you think stood you in good stead?
I played sport because I absolutely love it. I realise now that obviously with kind of social media and it being a whole lot easier to work out and find out how people progressed from a very young age, that you can kind of get wrapped up in the kind of, I know it's joked about your Project Mbappe's, or probably up here it's Project Callum McGregor's, but I play because I absolutely love it, and I get the best out of myself because I love it, and I think that's important, that you try not to make it feel like a job from a young age, because it didn't feel like a job probably till I was about 27, when all of a sudden football wasn't easy for me, and I was tripping myself up when I was just trying to play football. So if I could give any advice, it would be play it for the love as much as you can, and try not to taint it and make it a job way too early.
Good advice.
Cheers.
All right, let me introduce our first guest this evening, a man who knows Joe better than most. As a goalkeeper, he's best known for helping his hometown club Barnsley win promotion to the Premier League back in 1997. Unfortunately for him, a serious injury playing against Norwich effectively ended his playing career. However, as fate would have it, as goalkeeping coach for England and for Birmingham City, he would go on to play a pivotal role in Joe's career. So please welcome to the stage Dave Watson. Dave, welcome to Celtic Park. Welcome to Glasgow. How are you?
Oh, fantastic. Had a really nice weekend, football weekend. The family were at the game yesterday, and obviously to watch him perform and the team perform were really nice.
You obviously coached Joe through a lot of his career internationally, of course, mainly. What did you think when he was taking that penalty yesterday? Is that something that you would have advised him to do?
Well, with the national team, to be fair, I've seen him take hundreds in training. So I kind of had a rough idea where it were going. So as long as the goalie dove the wrong way, I think it's a goal, But the post got in the way.
I said that we can see you working with Joe here in the England setup. I said that you know Joe more than most because you've known him since he was a young goalkeeper. What were your first impressions of Joe Hart when you first met him?
I met Joe when he would have been a fledgling in his career, when he was playing for Shrewsbury Town. I was fortunate enough at that time to work with the young England teams before I made the transition up to the national team. And I'd known his coach at that time from Shrewsbury, Dave Timmins, because I'd been doing my coaching badges with him. And he'd always spoke about the talent he'd got at Shrewsbury with Joe. And I saw him firsthand play a couple of games for Shrewsbury, but every team were watching him play for Shrewsbury. So I was one of hundreds watching at that point. But the first time I actually had contact with him as a coach relationship were with one of the young England teams. And look, I've never worked with a guy who was so enthusiastic, wanted to be on the training ground for hours, but he pushed the coach-player boundaries as far as anybody I'd ever worked with, So my first recollection, like, I'm trying to be professional. I'm a young coach making my way. It's difficult, I'm probably 25, 26. young buck here walks on the training field, no pre-warm-up, no warm-up, 100 yards, kicking balls. I'm like, mate, we've not even started yet. And that's what you had to deal with from day one. But you push the boundaries, and we're still here. He's retiring, I'm retired, so like it's two old fellas up on the stage tonight, you know.
What was it about Dave, or what is it about Dave that worked so well for you, Joe? Because you worked with Dave in the national team, but also at Birmingham City.
I think it was that he obviously realised my enthusiasm and my love for the game, but and he's a boring old guy from Barnsley, isn't he? So I was always gonna put that pressure on him, but I think there was a lot of banter, and but his desire is the same as mine. Dave's very unfortunate, and one of the reasons that I feel so privileged to be able to do what I'm doing in terms of ending the career on my terms. Dave, had his career cut short through an injury, but you could just see that he wanted it. He just wanted it, and he wanted to be around people who wanted it. I absolutely loved the game. I loved his sessions. He didn't take any of my nonsense, even though we argued. And I loved being in an environment where me saying, all right, one more, that's too many, and him saying, shut up and do it. That's how I work at my best. I'm like, okay, I'll just do it, and we'll smash through it. And I think that relationship worked well.
Did you, Dave, at the time see qualities in Joe that would mean that he would go on to get the 75 caps for England, the 43 clean sheets that he got internationally? Was there signs right at the start that he could get to that level?
Look, there's always signs at that point. I think for him to be playing for Shrewsbury Town as a young goalkeeper, that's obviously massive pressure, because goalies don't get that platform, and they don't get that platform now, sometimes obviously through your own ability, but managers are under so much pressure in League One and League Two, the times that they can put young talent into their teams. So Gary Peters at the time, for all that we think X, Y or Z about older managers and what they did, it's a brave decision to put him in the goals at 18, because your job's on the line for sure. And when you're a young player, young goalie, young player, you're going to make mistakes, but you need to be in an environment where your teammates and the club, the manager, get you through them mistakes. Look, there's no doubt when I first met him, this guy had unbelievable natural talent. He loved football, he wanted to play football for all the right reasons, and he loved keeping the ball out of the net. And I could put the most damaging sessions on there and challenging sessions, but he absolutely loved it. And it's the one thing from my own experiences, because I had to finish so early, I had a real drive and desire inside me if I could work with people with the same mentality, because to do what he's done in his career, to play for a big team like Celtic, to play for national teams, you've got to have something inside you and something in here mentally to be able to get you over the line. But because my career was cut short, I wanted to work with the guys who wanted to take them extra steps to make their own careers. And my whole role really within this relationship and relationships I've had in the past were really to make goalkeepers what I wanted to be, and I lived my life through making them have the career that they wanted.
Well, you mentioned that obviously some big clubs were watching Joe at the time at Shrewsbury. Of course, you were probably never going to stay long at Shrewsbury with the big teams circling. It was only a matter of time before you got a big move. That was eventually to come at Manchester City. The goalkeeping coach at City at the time was none other than Tim Flowers, former Southampton, Blackburn and England goalkeeper. Someone you no doubt looked up to at the time. Well, I caught up with Tim through the week. Here's what he had to say about what he saw in you back then as a young goalkeeper.
We got wind that there was a young lad playing down at Shrewsbury Town that we needed to take a look at. Stuart Pearce was the manager at Manchester City at the time. So I went down 2 or 3 times to watch him play at the old ground at the Game Meadow. Obviously, Joe was a very young lad coming into a EFL setup there. And straight away, it struck me he was a leader, even at a tender age of, I think he was 16, 17. He was vocal, he was talking to his back four, and strip away all of the technical stuff. I just saw a lad who was at home at that level, at that young age, a lad who could take responsibility, wanted to dictate to lads a lot older than him. And then couple that with, at the time, 6'2", still growing into his frame. There was a lot to like. I was quite lucky at Man City. We had Kasper Schmeichel as well, and they were both training with the first team, and both went on to have fantastic careers at a similar age. And I mean, Joe, obviously I didn't know him when he was at Shrewsbury, but every single time I went to a game, sitting in the seats around me was Liverpool's goalkeeping coach, Everton's, Arsenal's, so it was quite obvious that if we didn't move quickly, and we got wind that Everton were about to swap one of their goalkeepers for him with some money, and we had to move quickly. So we did, and once we got him under the roof, listen, him and Kasper, to be fair, they wouldn't leave me alone. So I was out in the afternoons with them all the while, and I got 2 false hips. So I was like getting out of my car, coming back to Birmingham, and I couldn't even walk. So, but listen, they were a joy to be around, the 2 of them. But Joe, there was no doubt in my mind, and whether he remembers, I'm not sure. But I said to him at the time, not only will you play for Man City, you'll play for England for sure. I honestly believe you'll play for England. And obviously, he went on to play many, many times for his country.
I can assure you that Tim's not been kidnapped and held hostage. He's just got a really bad Wi-Fi in his house. I can tell you, Joe, it took us about 45 minutes to even get to that. He's not the most technically minded person, and neither am I. So excuse the quality there. But was Tim someone that you looked up to at the time?
Yeah, I was fully aware of Tim's career, and when potentially people were circling, I was part of a small town, and the Shropshire Star, the headline, often was linking me to here, there, and everywhere. But ultimately, I took it all with a pinch of salt because I knew that it was a potential story. And I didn't know how much it would be backed. But I spoke to Tim and I spoke to Stuart Pearce, two people I never thought I'd even be having conversations with. People that I knew about their careers, and they made me feel very welcome and put the effort in and. Put a lot of money on the line. I think they paid $600,000 up front for someone who'd played a season and a half in League Two, and I'll be forever grateful for them for that.
For the young kids in the audience tonight, when you say Manchester City, they think of this big club with lots of money and all the transfer fees that they can pay, and one of the top richest clubs in the world. It wasn't like that back then when you joined. Tell us about those early City days. What were Manchester City like as a club?
Look, to me, they were that club because I was at Shrewsbury Town in League Two. I couldn't believe I was just having a conversation with a Premier League team. But no, they were. I think the ultimate aim of the season often was to stay up, and then after that, it was anything was a bonus. We had the mighty Georgios Samaras as our main striker. But he was a £6 million signing, and he was the most expensive signing they made. But I'm not gonna claim they were paupers, but in comparison to what they are now and the change. But it was still a really, really special move for me.
Yeah, and those early days, did it fulfil the promise that you wanted it to?
I went in just completely open-minded. I was under no illusions that I was going in as a number 3. I got through the door, and Tim said there, Kasper was 4, and I was like, he's miles better than me. Why on earth have they even brought me in? But I just thought, it's a great opportunity. Who knows what's going to happen? I know that they'd give me opportunities to go out on loan, potentially higher than I'd been playing in the years for, and just it was basically. What an opportunity, and I'll see what happens, and I'll just go for it. I've never had a plan. I've always just seen what's in front of me, tried to do my best, and if it's good enough for someone, then great. If not, I've always backed myself for it to be good enough for someone else.
You mentioned about going on loan. You had some loan time at Tranmere, some loan time at Blackpool as well. When things weren't going well at City, you were out of the team. You needed somewhere to really find some game time, and the one you chose was Birmingham City, where Alex McCulloch was the manager. Ladies and gentlemen, please... No, I'm kidding. You would have clapped him though, wouldn't you? Because you're nice people. Yeah. However, it's probably the first time we have asked a former Rangers manager to contribute to a Celtic event, but that move for Joe turned out to be so important that we cast aside our differences and asked Alex for a word, and he was only too happy to oblige.
He was confident. He had a great rapport with the rest of the team. He was a very good-mannered bloke, and the players loved him. His teammates loved him. And game after game, there was a game against Chelsea where you kind of defied logic, and we had a great. I think we must have been a draw, or maybe beat Chelsea in that game. But I know for a fact that the players just absolutely loved Joe behind them. They knew that if they missed anything, Joe was pretty much certain to get it. And in that year, we finished 9th in the Premier League. It was quite an incredible feat for Birmingham City. But we recruited well, and I like to think that after my kind of rise in management, the one thing that I wanted to get right was recruitment at Birmingham, and for that season we got fantastic recruitment, and one of the key men was that goalkeeper Joe Hart. When I saw that he was coming to Scotland, then I knew that Celtic were getting a top goalkeeper, and he'd probably been a little bit disappointed about losing his place at Man City, but he had some great years there as well. There was changes in the game, and Joe adapted to that as well. And the one thing I knew with Celtic getting that guy in the back five, back four, sometimes with 3 at the back now, then Joe Hart would be a great rock for that defence and for in fact the whole team and the club. And hopefully he remembers Birmingham and sees it as a big part of his progression in the game, and I'm sure he will agree with that. And well done, Joe Hart. You're some man. Great.
Of course, Dave, you were there at the time as well. How important was, I'll ask you first, Joe, how important was that move for you that season? Because everything seemed to just go right for you and the club that season.
Yeah, it was huge for me. I'd kind of just established myself at City, and then the Sheikh Mansour took over. Mark Hughes came in. They had a lot of money. Then, and they needed marquee signings. And the kind of 22-year-old from Shrewsbury that is signed was okay, but they were trying to sign Buffon. They were trying to sign proper big dogs, and they ended up bringing Shea Given in. What a top keeper! And I was like, where do I stand? I need to get out, but I was tied into a 5-year deal, so it wasn't easy to sell me. And then straight away, I was like, I need to get out on loan if that needs to happen. And Birmingham was the first opportunity, and I spoke to Alex and spoke to Dave, and I ran there, and they put a lot of faith in me. I think I was 23 at the time, and it was everything. And we talked through the season. There's obviously an easy narrative of my career going back to Manchester City, but I was done. I was completely cooked there. I was done. I was looking elsewhere. We were potentially talking about signing for Birmingham. What would it cost? What would it be? And then football's mental, isn't it? Mancini comes in. He doesn't like Shea. He wants a big goalkeeper. This big dope's playing well at Birmingham, and you can have him if you want him. And then next minute I'm back there, and the rest of it is probably what people remember. But we went through it, didn't we, Davey? And it was a lot of fun. We created something. We were famous for 1-0s. We were a hard-fought team, same 11, same subs, old school. Alex McLeish, rock solid guy, and it was a good year.
Real enjoyable year. I'd never coached in the Premier League until the season before. I joined from Nottingham Forest in the January. Mike Taylor was the goalkeeper at the time, but we ended up in the 2 or 3 months we got relegated back to the Championship. Mike kept goal for that year, but you have to make choices, as Alex said about recruitment, and Mike did a fantastic job to get the team promoted from the Championship. But the Premier League's a different animal, and obviously working with him, knowing him through the England youth teams and that, even though at that stage he was still a very young goalkeeper to play Premier League football, I knew he'd got the talent, the character, the personality, and actually, knowing that Man City had let him down a little bit, he'd got the bit between his teeth. And I think that season, nothing to do with me really. This is the monster, and he created his own career. But that season, I think, were a real pivotal role in his career, because he proved to Man City that he can play Premier League football, he can play for the big teams, and I think everything that moved forward from that point were after that first season at Birmingham City. We loved him, we loved the football, I loved working with him day to day. A little bit like Tim, I'd be crawling off the training ground. I had a new knee last year, that's his fault. But these things are what happened, and we forged a real friendship, a bond. But we had professional boundaries. Things had to be said and things had to be done. And when you go in the room and you're dissecting the game and you're talking about areas to improve or what we'd like to improve on and areas to get better, that's where we have the real brutal conversations. But I think because of the relationship we had, and this would be the same for anybody out there, especially goalkeepers, if you can get a relationship with a coach and you can trust the coach-player relationships are very, very special. Yes, there's boundaries. I'm not going playing golf every weekend. I'm not going out for a beer or a meal. But you have to form a relationship so you get the best of each other. And I would say that year that we worked together at Birmingham would have been one of the best years in my coaching career at club football, for sure.
You mentioned... Joe, the crazy football world. If you could maybe perhaps give us a bit of an insight into what goes on behind the scenes when a manager comes into a club and just doesn't fancy a particular goalkeeper. You mentioned Mark Hughes, I think, came in, the money came in, and then you were kind of out of things. Shay Given came in, and then Mancini comes in, you're back in. Are these conversations, are these decisions all explained to you behind the scenes? Do you get told why you're out or why you're back in?
No, you don't. And Dave's, alluded to me coming to Birmingham. Yeah, I was angry. I was personally wronged. Everyone was out to get me. The whole world was against me. And now I've grown up. I've realised it's nothing personal. It's business. It's high-end business. A lot of money at stake. And I don't take any offence to anything that happens in football, because people are doing it because they're trying to do what's right for them, and the people in the power are trying to make decisions. It's tough. Yes, it's tough. But it's a tough game, and if you want to get into this game, you've got to realise that you don't have to accept it. You can certainly stand your ground. And every single time, I just said, look, I just want to have an honest conversation. Just tell me the truth, and I'll work it out. And then I realised that you're headbutting a wall. Like I say, it wasn't personal against me. Mark Hughes didn't come in and go, I'm going to ruin that kid's career. He can do one. He came in thinking, how am I going to win the first cup with Manchester City, right? So I've got Joe, or I can bring Shay in. I've got Shay Given, he's unbelievable. Joe, don't worry, move, off you go. Find him somewhere to go. And that's not personal to me, that's just a game. But like Dave said, I think, I'm glad I didn't know that. I didn't want to have that head when I was 22, 23. I wanted the world to revolve around me. I wanted to be everything at my fingertips, and if they weren't going to give it me, I was going to fight and scrape and battle. So I'm glad I didn't know that. But at the same time, in hindsight now, I'm an awful lot calmer sitting here, realizing that SHIT happens, and you just need to roll with it.
You mentioned then you end up back at Manchester City. Roberto Mancini is the manager there. There's a lot more money at the club, but a lot more expectation there. Took a while to win trophies, despite all of that. How important was that first FA Cup win? You won the final against Stoke, but that semi-final win, particularly against Manchester United, there you are there again.
Kid's a maniac, I swear. That was everything. That was electric. We were making a lot of noise. There was a lot of people outside. You want the world to be against you. You want everyone going, oh, it's only because of money. It's only because of this. It's only because of that. But like I say, that I didn't have the hindsight I had now, and we just wanted it all. The squad was crazy. There's 5-6 people who aren't in that squad who were already Premier League winners, internationals. It was wild. Mancini was wild. We were wild, but we were just hungry. We were thirsty for blood. We wanted to win that trophy for Manchester City. I've obviously got a huge affiliation with them. I know many people who are diehard City fans and would openly say, look, we loved it in League 2, we loved it in League 1, we love it in the Prem. We don't really care. Whatever happens. It's all part of the ride. But to beat them in the semi-final and then go on to win the FA Cup, one for me personally was huge, but as a club it was a really big moment, and a moment that I'm really, really proud of.
And to put it into perspective, again, for the youngsters in here, that was 2011, and it was the first piece of silverware at Manchester City since 1976.
Yeah, and we'd qualified for the Champions League for the first time. Stuff was happening. It was a ride. It was an absolute ride. Things were growing. People were coming in from all over the world. Money was flying everywhere. Fights were happening. It was just drama. There was press all around our training ground. It was carnage, but it was the right time to be. Like, you know, now I'd probably look at it and think, "Oh, that's a lot." But at the age I was, you know, you just saw that idiot in the tunnel there, looking like. Often I was accused of being on drugs. I was that hyped. I just loved it, and I just wanted to be in it, and that's how I got the best of myself.
And of course, the following year, we then had that incredible end to the season where Manchester City won the first Premier League title under Mancini, and that we know it as the Aguero goal. You're part of this celebration. Can you take us back to this moment where Manchester United there, they think they've won the league, but you've got more goals up your sleeve?
Look, I can't even explain how that felt. The season ebbed and flowed. We were winning everything. We'd kind of turned the tide. We smashed United 6-1 at Old Trafford, and then we had a real. You know, it's not easy to win titles. You know, that's proven. It showed. Look at us. You know, and the ones that City still win. It's not easy to win titles, and we had a bad moment. And the next minute, United I think they were 8 points clear with 6 games to go, and then they had some bad results. We had some good results. We played them, beat them. It was done. All we had to do was beat QPR. Zabaleta scored. He never scores. It's done. And then we're 2-1 down. They're down to 10 men. Paddy Kenny was in goal for Sheffield United. He was saving things without even looking. I thought, you know, wife was saying that we need to get out of here. The whole stadium was dead. We'd messed it up. We'd bottled it, and we were just like, you know, you'll never hear this said anymore, but, you know, very much like same old Manchester City, because previously that was what they were associated with. Edin scored 2-2. I was like, I don't even care. Like, what are you doing? I'd prefer lose. You know, you're pulling on my heartstrings, and then look, QPR all of a sudden found out that they were safe. They were playing in that game to stay up. They needed a result. And our game went on, and news filtered onto them that they didn't need a result anymore, and they stopped. They didn't stop trying, but they certainly stopped attacking. They were down to 10 men, and then we scored that goal. And you know, I speak to my family after. I don't even know how I felt. I honestly don't. It blew my head off. I couldn't even communicate. I didn't know where I was thinking. Football does that to you. That moment did it to me. It still does it to me now. It's a spine tingler. And like I say, I'll probably keep saying this, but I'm forever proud that I was part of that.
Dave, how proud were you to have played a part when that moment happened?
I never realised that we'd probably resonate over such things, but I remember my wife and my son who are here tonight. My son was 10 months old. I'd just lost in the playoff semi-final, I think, to Blackpool. We'd been in the Championship that year. We'd played in Europe. We'd had 60 games, and I've come home. Season's finished, and my wife screamed the living room and woke him up. She went as mad as what you did, I did, and we're 90 miles away, another team, but that's the connection we had, and I live for them moments, for people I've been connected with, and that were an unbelievable moment in football. But watching the game and watching him play yesterday, I get the same pleasure from that. He's playing for a massive football club here, massive. This is a global commodity, Celtic. It's an institution, and Man City's become that way. But when he was first at Manchester City, it was nothing like the juggernaut it is now. But just to watch him play and win a game like yesterday, it's the same feelings for me and my family, because we live it through this guy.
I want to concentrate in the second half all on Celtic. So we've got about 5 minutes to get from now to when you join Celtic. So let's crack through this, because again, you're on a high there at Manchester City, but then you've got another low to come when Pep Guardiola arrives at Manchester City, and you then have to leave again. Tell us about the conversations that happened at that time with yourself and Pep.
Yeah, look, again, I'd slightly mellowed by that point, so I didn't want to rip his head off when he said it. I felt it. He was announced in February. Pellegrini. I was loving being a part of Manchester City. I bled that place. I'd been a part of it. You know, I was right-hand man to Vincent, and we were doing everything we could to make the team better, to make the club better. I had a great affiliation with the fans, and I still have that today. But business is business, right? And the main man was coming in. He has his way of playing. I'd never been asked to play that way. If I were, look, I'm gonna go completely the other way. I'm gonna look at him from his point of view. He wasn't sure whether I could be the cog in his wheel that he needed. He wasn't sure, and it was made clear to him that whatever he needed for his machine to work, it would be given to him. So he's the top of his game, because he's able to remove emotion, and he removed emotion. He removed. And he believed in what he was doing, and what he believed in doing was he was able to bring in one of the Barcelona goalies at the time. It was either going to be Ter Stegen or Claudio Bravo or Joe Hart. And his decision was for his team to work the best was, I think he actually wanted Ter Stegen, but they wouldn't sell him, so they took Bravo. They took anyone rather than me, basically. But but obviously I knew that in him making that decision, him not having the time to maybe see if I could work the role, I had to go. I was playing for England. I needed to play for England. Again, I was tied into a long contract because the club believed in me previous to him. So I was going on loan at 29, 30. It was the only thing that worked for me. And then I got a little bit lost because, as the fans here can see, and as I know, I play my best football when I feel part of something. And then I got a little bit lost in the footballing world. I tried my best.
Well, before you get to that, the team that you did go on loan to was Torino, and this is a place where Torino weren't flying high in Serie A at the time. There you are arriving in Turin, sunglasses, looking like a supermodel. But you had a great time in Turin, yeah?
I absolutely loved it. It was, however, when I came back from City, it wasn't decided that I was going to leave, but then it became apparent. And then by mid-August, I need to find a club. Everyone's got the keepers that they need. Any loans or sniffs that I had didn't work apparently financially. And then from nowhere, like this, I'm talking 28th of August here, they went, you can go on loan to Torino if you want. And I was like, what? How does that even work? So God knows what's going on there, because it definitely wasn't legit. But I was like, you know what? I'm doing it. If I was on the bench for City, and they were bringing another goalie in, so I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for it. Obviously, did my research. It seemed like a fantastic club, fantastic city. Spoke to the manager via Kolarov, because it was the late Sinisa Mihailovic, a Serbian guy he was pretty nuts as well, but he was a lot of fun to work with. I just thought, why not? Spoke to my wife. My son was a toddler at the time. He was 2. I said, look, for me to carry on playing for my country, it was actually Sam Allardyce's very short tenure. I spoke to him, and he said, look, Joe, if you're playing, I'm going to play you, so it's up to you what you want to do. But if you're not, I'm not. So I hopped on a plane and just went for it, and absolutely loved it. Amazing city, amazing club to play for. Wild, but it was just, it was 8 months of chaos.
Sounds like a great time. And then you mentioned kind of getting lost in the football wilderness and kind of falling out of love with the game.
I always loved the game. I loved the game. I just didn't like the business.
Got you. So let's fast forward then. So you're at Spurs. Nuno Espirito Santo has got you out. I don't know what you're doing, training with the kids, whatever. And you get, I don't know what your agent perhaps says, there's a phone call for you. There's a guy called Ange Postecoglou wants to speak to you. What is your immediate reaction?
Yeah, well, I did a year with Jose. That was COVID, and then Nuno came in, my mate Nuno, and told me that under no circumstances would he ever consider putting me on the football field. And I came home and I said, you know what? I don't need this anymore. I don't need this anymore. I love playing the game. I'll go and play with my mates. I love playing footy, but I can't be arsed with this. But I still had a year on my contract, so Spurs needed me out because I said I'm still going to sit there and they can pay me. They can deal with it.
Quite right.
It's business at the end of the day. And then, so they said, you know what, can you speak to Ange at Celtic? And I said, 100% that's something that appeals to me. You know, that's a proper club, that's proper football. Got on the phone, sobbed my heart out to Ange, and told him, you know, I said, look, football's been tough. 2 young kids. I'm not. It's not quite the number one in my life anymore. They're way more important than me. But I would love it if you could help me in terms of family-wise. I would love to come and be a part of your club. He said he'd done his research on me as a player. He's done his research on me as a person. And then, yeah, we had a really honest conversation. And Ange, as you guys now know, and obviously I got to know, he's a good guy. He's a good guy who understands people. That's one of his greatest qualities. And I think he thought it was worth the risk to bring an old boy up from England.
I think that's a good time to take a pause now that you've joined the club, and we can focus and talk a lot more in the second half about Celtic with some very special guests as well. The bar's back open. Please feel free to go and get yourself a drink. Come back in half an hour, or about 25 minutes' time. I'd like to thank and please give a warm round of applause to Dave Watson and to Joe Hart. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, if you're seated and refreshed, let's get going with the second half. Please welcome once again Celtic goalkeeper Joe Hart. Bit more relaxed now, you're into this now.
I'm not crying this time now.
All right, so thankfully it's just 45 minutes, no extra time or penalties.
We'll see.
We got you to Celtic before the interval there, and when you joined Celtic, you mentioned that conversation you had with Ange Postecoglou. I know one of the first things that you wanted to do when you came here was to speak to the captain, and of course we had a new captain at that point because Scott Brown had left the club and Callum McGregor had taken the armband. How important was it for you? Did he just hit his head on that pole?
Oh, no.
I'm surprised it's still standing.
You all right, lad?
Oh, Cameron. So, Joe, take us back to that time then. How important was it for you to have an initial conversation with Callum McGregor, and when did it happen, and how did it go?
So it all happened pretty quickly, the Celtic move eventually, when all was decided, and there was a game in Jablanek in the Czech Republic, that well-known European fixture that everyone wanted to be at. And I just flew out. It was all a bit of a whirlwind. It was like, let's go for it. Landed. I think we were in Prague, and I was just trying to get my bearings. Obviously, trying to work out what the heck was going on. We were 2 days before the game because it was quite a long journey, and obviously I just walked straight in. When you sign at a new club, it's always quite frantic. COVID. It was a weird time in life, but. I was greeted and taken to the hotel, and then obviously they were like, look, it'd be great to sit down with Callum. And I was really nervous because I was coming to a club. I wasn't quite sure what the narrative was around me at that time. I know, obviously football-wise, I had a resume, but I didn't know what people thought of me as a person. So I wanted to get in front of Callum and let him know that I wasn't coming in to do anything other than serve under him. You know, he was the leader, and obviously he earned his stripes, earned that captain's armband that should weigh heavy but doesn't because it's on the right man. And I wanted to let him know that I was, yeah, definitely. And I was looking to serve under him and work for him. But like I didn't know Callum. I didn't know how he operated, and. Considering age-wise, I'm his senior. He made me feel so at ease, made me feel so welcome. He listened to what I had to say in terms of, I wanted to kind of spit out that I'm not that kind of person who's going to try and undermine or make anything about me. I just wanted to work hard and be a part of the club. And there's all sorts of great leadership. There's been obviously being a top player, that helps, but I think being understanding, I think being caring for the people under you and willing to get to know someone as a person and see how they can help them. I think there's some huge qualities, and he's certainly got those.
But you also want to play for a club who has a very strong leader, someone who you know is going to lead the dressing room. Did you come away from that first meeting with Callum thinking, yeah, we've got a real top guy here in charge, we're going to be okay as far as the dressing room's concerned?
Yeah, I really did. I've been around some pretty special leaders in my time. There's some names at Shrewsbury I can name, but ones that you'd be more aware of, I was, Richard Dunn at City. Vincent Kompany, an absolute colossus. I was around your likes of, Rio, John Terry, proper, huge Steven Gerrard. These are the captains, Frank Lampard, that I've been around. Yeah. Totally forgot that bit, sorry. Apologies. But yeah, your Harry Kane.
We got past Alex McLeish. That kind of went okay.
Yeah, I pushed my luck there. I appreciate that. But yeah, so I've been around, and like I say, you need people like that in a place like this. You really do, and the club is obviously lucky to have someone in Scott Brown who will be known throughout the footballing world for what he can do on and off the field. And a lot of pressure was put on Callum. Obviously, it was off the back of a tough season in terms of not winning anything, which is almost unthinkable up here. And yeah, he's definitely the man for it.
Well, let's find out the other side of that conversation, shall we? Let's bring out Celtic captain Callum McGregor. Nice shoes. I like them. So, Callum, you heard Joe talk about, how keen he was to meet you when he first came. You had just taken the armband. How did you feel about Joe coming into the club before you knew him, before you know what he's like as a man just now? Were you a little bit nervous that someone with such a big reputation and a big personality as Joe was coming in?
Yeah, absolutely. You see these guys and you see them on the TV and you think there's characters. You think, oh, I'm about to meet Joe Hart. And I think that was the type of signing at the time that I think the club was desperate for, a big name, someone with a huge personality, someone with a huge CV. And to sit in front of him for the first time, you wouldn't have known any of that, honestly. He was a total gent. He was the same, he was understanding. He came in, he said to me, look, I'm desperate to win. I want to win, I want to play at this club. And that was music to my ears. So from that first conversation, I thought, we've got a top guy here, and he's going to help this club. And he's absolutely done that so far.
How much credit do you pay Callum? Because in terms of leadership, it's all very well saying you guys got on and you obviously have both leadership qualities, but for Callum then to almost kind of use your leadership as well and be clever enough to know that, all right, you're here, you're a big personality, a huge character, it would have been understandable for Callum to go, yeah, but I'm the captain, so therefore you just take a backward step. But the two of you have developed a real kind of a leadership partnership, obviously with Callum being the captain. How much credit would you pay Callum for not just putting you to the side and saying, that's great, you're a cracking guy, but I'm the captain?
I think that's someone who understands what it is to be at a club like this. There's way more than just me and Callum. There's plenty of roles to be had in this team. There's the guy I talked. There's the young naive ones. There's the ones who have no idea what's going on. There's the ones who are aspiring for more. There's so many different.
I don't know why I'm looking at you, Greg. Sorry, you just caught my eye.
But there really is, and you've got to understand how to communicate with your fan base, how to work it as a family. There's so many different aspects to life at a club that plays so many games and at the highest level. And Callum's obviously, he had plenty of time to learn under Scott, but also learn how to be a part of the club and a huge part of the club. And I think you need everyone. You need the people on the field. You need the people off the field. I think Kel he goes out of his way to make sure that he knows what's going on and who needs what and who needs help. Because, like I say, there's a football club to manage, and there's also a lot of human beings to manage. And I've been lucky also to have two, top managers whilst I've been here who, at the end of the day, they understand that we're all humans and we all need to help each other.
What were those early days like, Callum, in that season? Because as Joe mentioned, things hadn't gone great the season before. New manager came in. There was an acceptance that it might take a bit of time to settle down, and it certainly looked that way for the first few games. But then when you hit the ground, that win, perhaps at Pittodrie up against Aberdeen, was crucial. That first away win. How were those early days, in particular, fitting Joe into that system and the way you wanted to play?
Yeah, like you said, it was a difficult time. I think it was a team in transition, it was a club in transition almost, and I sort of mentioned that somebody like Joe is the perfect signing, because I think it brought belief back to the club, it brought belief to the fans that, maybe we can do this quite quickly if we've got characters and big names like Joe, and I think he very quickly established himself as a key member of the dressing room as well, along with, probably all the guys that are sitting in the front row there as well. There's some big personalities, and this is something that I say all the time, you can never win things when there's just one of you. It just doesn't work. You need 4, 5, 6 leaders, and we're really lucky over the time that I've been captain especially, that we've had really good, strong leaders that bounce off each other really well. So when we go back to the kind of early days, guys like Joe were invaluable, because if it's just me speaking all the time, people get sick of you, they just switch off and think, he's talking again, But now everybody's a bit like that with Joe, so. But it's so important that you get back up and you get buy-in for the players, because as a manager as well, you need your players to buy into what you're doing. Joe certainly did that with me, the guys certainly did that with me, and I think very quickly you could see us starting to find our feet as the type of team that we wanted to be, the way we wanted to behave, the style that we wanted to do it in. And I think when people see that and you're genuine and you give absolutely everything that you've got, I think people then buy into you, and I think that's what the supporters did really early on.
And I think, obviously, Joe, when you come to Celtic, you come here with the opportunity of winning trophies as well, and you've won numerous trophies in your time at Celtic. How much was that an attraction to you coming here? All those celebrations you've had in the dressing room.
You can't beat that feeling. You can't, and it's down to hard work. It's down to working hard as a team. Yeah, I love it, and I got a taste of it. I got a taste of it at a point in my life where I thought that would happen all the time.
Thank God you never did that yesterday.
Yeah, I may as well have done. But like I say, there was a point in my career where I'm 25, 26. I've cracked this. Every year, which ones are we going to win? At some point, we're going to win the Champions League, and then bang, gone. See you later. In the wilderness, sat on the bench, Burnley, sat on the bench, Tottenham, being told that I'm not even good enough to sit on the bench, and then hang on, you got an opportunity to go up to Celtic. You got an opportunity to fight for titles, lift them above your head. Have my family on the pitch with me. You can't turn that down. It's an amazing feeling.
I'm interested to know what your perception was of playing for Celtic, because people who come here who have had big careers and played at the highest level, they come here and they say, I didn't really know how big it was until I was there. Did you have people saying that to you?
That was the one common thing that I heard with anyone that I spoke to, and by about a third or fourth person, I went, you know what, I'm not even going to try and come up with some sort of version that I'm going into. I was like, I'm just going to feel it and go into it, open-minded, with everything that I've got, with my heart, with my footballing ability, and see where it takes me.
So looking back on that first season, were there any games in particular that stood out for you?
Tony Ralston at the back post at Ross County. That was wild. Obviously, externally, everyone will remember that moment, but I'm remembering Carl Starfelt losing his mind because Big Jordan White just elbowed him clean in the beak, and there was no VAR, and he couldn't, in his Scandinavian voice, he couldn't get the unjust version of just shut up and deal with it. So he lost his head. He got sent off. It it was tight in the league. We needed that win. Yeah, and then ball stood up at the back stick and Big Tone just bulldozed it in, and the place went off. And that was a special moment in our season, a special memory for me.
Yeah, who could forget that moment? Will you, when you finish up playing this season and go on, perhaps you'll go on to be a pundit, will you now be one of these people who says you don't know how big it is until you get up there?
No, I'll just smile and say, experience it, or I'm not talking to you. I don't need to sell this place. I don't need to sell this place. You know, I've got everyone associated with me, and anyone who's been up here has absolutely loved being part of the madness, and I don't need to sell it. It's not for me. I just say, fair play. If you don't want to experience that, it's up to you. Thank you.
Let me ask you about Stevie Woods as well, because Callum knows Stevie really well. They've both been at the club for a number of years. That relationship with the goalkeeping coach is very important. How important was that relationship to you, and how good has it been?
It's been great for me. Very similar to, Dave talked about it earlier in the first half about having a relationship, and that's when I've, again, worked my best, when I've trusted the guy that's been in front of me. I've had someone who's, willing to push boundaries, ask questions, be honest. And I think it helps that Stevie's been a part of this club, and he loves this club just as much as anyone, and he wants nothing but the best for it. So you feel that as a goalkeeper, and you feel like you've got some real standards to live up to, and I really appreciate him and everything that he's done for me. He's been harsh, he's been heavy, and he's been on it, and that's all I can ask of someone. And every day I want to pay him back for putting the trust in me and pushing me to try and play the best football that I'm humanly capable of, and that's all I try and do every day, and I appreciate him for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Callum, let me ask you about Joe in the dressing room, because we've had a couple of little kind of insights when the cameras have been allowed in there, perhaps at cup finals or stuff. He seems like a very vocal person in the. You both do. How would you describe Joe? You've kind of spoken about it already, but how would you describe Joe in the dressing room? Maybe before a game, and then perhaps after a cup that you've won.
After a few drinks, you mean?
After a few drinks, yeah.
Still as lively. I think you've seen some of the clips there. It's Joe in a nutshell. It's someone who wears his heart on his sleeve. He's a born winner. He wants to win. He wants to push his teammates. He wants to push the club to as much success as physically possible, and he gives his all, and that's what you see in the clips. I hear it every single game that we play. He's demanding the best, the standards, as much as the players can give them, and push each other. So to have someone like that in your dressing room backing you up, and when the players look at him, they respect him, so they listen, and it's so key to have someone like that beside you that people want to actually work for and want to run through brick walls for, because ultimately that's the only way you're going to get success, is if you feel like when you look each other in the eye, you trust each other and you're willing to go to war for each other. That's the only way.
Let me ask you, Joe, about the mental side of the game. It seems to me that from a goalkeeper's perspective, perhaps more than an outfield player, mentality is such a huge part of that. We saw when you announced your retirement that you sat with your, would you call it a mind coach, a life coach? How would you call it?
A mental coach. That's what he goes by.
A mental coach. When did that come into your career, and how important has that resource and that assistance been to you?
So that came in. I was about, like I say, I've never really. I didn't think till 26, 27. I just did. It was like this is the next goal, smash. Next goal, smash. Go. This level, that level. Geez, the levels. I'm getting high here. I'm getting high. Winning Premier Leagues, Golden Gloves, being talked about with the only other, some serious goalkeepers I was being talked about with, and I felt comfortable. I was sat at that table and I was comfortable, and then, geez, out of nowhere, I couldn't even tie my laces, and I was like, what is going on here? And I started a season for City, and I was a complete hazard. I was coming for things that I shouldn't come for. I wasn't coming for things that I should come for, and I was banging my head against a brick wall. I was a problem in the team, and from being that guy that, you know, Kel talked about, I've always been the guy to that point. It's like, Joe's in goal, he'll take care of business. And then I was overtraining, I was undertraining, I didn't know what to do. And then my management said to me, would you be interested in speaking to someone? And I said, 100%, you know, I'm up for anything. So ironically, our paths crossed with the manager, actually. They said, we'd love you to speak to a guy called Dr. Steve Peters, who's quite well known with the chimp paradox. I said, cool, put me in front of him. So he was working exclusively with Liverpool at the time, under Brendan. So Brendan, you know, fair play to him, he didn't know me. He didn't have to know me. He said, look, I'm not comfortable with you using him, but I've got another guy that I think would be good for you. Spoke to Jamie. We started to simplify things. Just calm me down. Just calm the whole process down. Back to seeing it for what it was, trying to catch a ball, trying to be the best person I could be off the field, and put myself in the best place to try and be a good goalkeeper. And we've had a relationship ever since. We don't work together now. We're good friends, and I appreciate him. He's really helped me in my life.
When we see that reaction, when we watch your reaction in that penalty shootout yesterday, first when you missed and then when you scored, there's kind of like not getting too down and then not getting too high. Is that all part of the kind of mental control that you have?
Yeah, I think I'm really simple in how I look at it. You know, when it comes to the penalty, I felt like I was taking the penalty because I should be taking it. I'd practiced it. I'd worked on it. I did everything that I planned to do. I missed it. That happens, and you know, it's actually awkward to look back and see that I've turned around, and I forget that obviously there's cameras on you, but I winked, like, who does that? But I was but I was just trying to let the boys know, because if someone misses a penalty, you know, they go back to the team and the guys are able to say, don't worry about it, and you know, get their arm around it, but they can't with me. I'm down there. So it was my weird way of just letting everyone know, like, don't worry, I've missed it, but it wasn't through anything other than lack of trying. I'm going to go in goal now and do my best to save it. Don't worry about me. And I don't know, the boys looked comfortable and calm and scored the goals and eventually made the save and did my job, but yeah.
Well, you mentioned the mental side of the game, and ironically crossing paths with Brendan Rodgers, the Celtic manager, who again speaks a lot about mentality. So let's hear from him. Let's put him in that chair and welcome Celtic manager Brendan Rodgers. Before we get into all that, Brendan, how are you after yesterday? Did you sleep well last night, or did you waking up in the middle of the night screaming, Joe, no?
Oh, to be fair, it's a good job we scored or saved that penalty, on the been here tonight, but no, I think the defibrillators were needed after yesterday. I was saying to the guys in the room, in all my career as a manager, I've never been as tense as that. It was absolutely incredible, but listen, the boys will tell you sometimes you play really well and don't win a game or get through, but we got through, and that was the most important thing.
It's the first time anyone will get to ask you then about the prospect of playing Rangers in the cup final to end the season, to end Joe's career. How do you feel about that?
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, it's a really exciting end to the season for us, and these are the games that when you play for Celtic and you want to be involved in. So we're really important games up until that point. But,
of course.
But yeah, it'll be great way to finish the season.
Let me ask you about mentality then. We've just been speaking to Joe about the mental coach, Jamie, who came into his life ironically, circuitously, because of your advice. How important mentality is it for you, in particular, to have a goalkeeper who's got real mental strength?
I think all the best ones do. They have that personality, and the story that Joe was just saying, he's absolutely right. The guys that looked after him at the time, I knew really, really well. And they'd come to me and asked about Dr. Steve Peters, who's world renowned, and he was very, very good. But I had him working with me at Liverpool, and of course, Joe was a rival at Man City at that point, and obviously I didn't know him, but I wasn't overly comfortable of helping our rival's goalkeeper. I'm quite a caring sort of man, but not that when it comes to it. So I said, listen, you can't work with Steve, but I also have worked with a guy who I think is very, very good, and he's a good man, so I would recommend him. And obviously then Jamie became a part of Joe's life, and thankfully it worked out really well.
Yeah, it did indeed. So Brendan, take us back to that. Let me take you back to the time where you're coming back to Celtic. You then obviously want to really focus on the squad of players that you've got there. You didn't have Joe first time round. You're coming back. Joe Hart is now your goalkeeper. How pleased were you at that, and how confident were you that Joe would be that rock that he's turned out to be?
Well, he's been absolutely brilliant signing for Celtic. Obviously, having been here before and had Craig, who done brilliant in my time here as well. Coming back to play for a big club, your goalkeeper has to have personality, and he needs to have all of these mental qualities as well as being a really good goalkeeper. So seeing Joe and working against him and knowing people who know him, I knew what a good man he was. And I'd met with Cal in the summer and told me how brilliant he'd been for the squad and how he'd helped him and helped lead the team. So I was really looking forward to working with Joe, and I think the biggest compliment I can give him from when I came in and seen him first train and play. Joe's now 37 now, but he plays every game like it's the first time anyone is going to see him play. And for someone who's gone through everything and played 75 odd times for England and having the career that he's had, to still have that hunger and sacrifice and commitment is absolutely frightening. So it's been a real joy to work with him, and like I said, because it's a young group of players that are understanding about playing for a big club, some of them. So to have Callum, some of the other guys, Joe, it's absolutely amazing to, as I said, for him to be involved in that sort of leadership group, really.
In this leadership group, we've been hearing about it from the guys. How good is it for you as a manager to know that the dressing room area is covered as far as the leadership is concerned, and that you can kind of take a bit of a backward step when it comes to that kind of dynamic in there?
Well, it's very important. I think that in my first time here it was that, and coming back, a big part of obviously coming back was Callum, and knowing that he'd been through that cycle, and obviously coming in and seeing how he deals with it all as well is a great source of comfort for me, because the changing room's the changing room. They get on really well, but it's important that it's managed well, and thankfully we've got a really, really good group that do that, led by these guys.
I'm going to let the audience into a bit of a secret, because Joe, you and I had a conversation about a week ago just to prepare for this, and for me to just make sure I had my facts right about your career. And when I asked you, you were talking about how special Celtic is, and it's something that we hear from a lot of players who come here. And I asked you, what is it about Celtic that makes it so special? What is it about the supporters, about the club, that makes it so special? And I was kind of expecting you to say something along the lines of, Celtic Park, 60,000 people on a European night under the lights, absolutely incredible. But you said two words that were the furthest thing from my mind, two words that I would never have expected to come out of your mouth. Do you remember the two words you said?
I said Livy away.
You did. He said Livy away. So perhaps you can explain to the hundreds of people in here why Livy away, and this is it, it is Livy away. Why does that make Celtic for you so special?
So Livy away, the Tony Macaroni Stadium. It's my first ever game professionally that I played on AstroTurf. It was my first away game for Celtic. I then realised that they let us pretty much take the place over, which I didn't know that was a thing. Then we lost 1-0 to Livy away.
You're not allowed to do that here, Joe.
We got battered, but do you know what? I felt it was a tough game and transition. under the new manager, total football on a dry one at Livy. Yeah, tough, lost. But anyway, then later in the season, we were Livy away, and it was probably the most important game. We knew if we got through that, then we could win the league, and I think it was quite edgy. And I remember the second goal going in. I think, what's the capacity there? 10,000. It burst my eardrums, and I thought, this is unreal, really euphoric feeling. And for that to be created in that, I say this respectfully, there's not much life in that stadium unless you create it. There's not an awful lot of history. There's not an awful lot of eyes around the world. But what's created in that stadium by the Celtic fan base this year, the new song, "Don't Worry, Be Happy," just half an hour, just complete, constant bang, bang, and I can feel it when I'm in the goal. And this is a team that, we're on the edge. It's close. We're in and for that, just because of those words and that feeling and the I got my first sending off there. It's special to me. There's not, yeah. It's special, and just the atmosphere that's created in, like I say, in a place that doesn't particularly have much history. I speak highly about Champions League nights. They're of course emotional here, but that place really sums it up, and I just absolutely love it. I just think it's amazing when you win there. The feeling's unreal.
Callum, they do say you have to be a bit crazy to be a goalkeeper. Is Livy away one of your favourite fixtures?
He summed it up well, didn't he?
It makes it sound amazing.
He does, aye, but it's not that good, I'll tell you that.
Joe, let me ask you, and Brendan, Callum as well, about the evolution of a goalkeeper. Without getting too deep into it, you spoke when Pep had a word with you at Manchester City. You didn't play the way he wanted you to play, and there has been kind of an evolution of a goalkeeper through your career that's gone from being a goalkeeper who's simply there to save shots and penalties to being someone who has to play with the ball at his feet, come out of his box, play, sweeper, keeper, as it is. How have you dealt with that transition? Has it been tough at times, and how do you feel you've got on with it?
Always learning in this game. The game really does humble you with the way the evolution of it, and especially as a goalkeeper. Literally, I've gone from, as you said, standing goal, do your best to save it, and whack it as far away. If they can't score if the ball's miles away. I absolutely love training. I love being part of possessions. I've never been part of them. I'm learning on the job every day. Even, I know I'm calling it a day in a couple of weeks, but I'm still trying to learn every day and understand why and how, because, I think you can see people on the TV now and they'd say, why is he getting involved in that? He doesn't need, why is he passing it there? It's because we work really, really hard on everything that we're doing to play what could potentially look high risk, but, we're professionals. We work every day at making this way of playing. Is we play it because we feel like it's the best way to win the game, but you've got to work hard, you've got to be committed. You need 11 starters, you need 5 people willing to come on, you need the other guys who are tuned into what's going on, concussion subs, the boys who are training back on the match days. You need everyone focused and playing this rhythm, and that includes a goalkeeper who, at the start of my career, we trained on 2 fields that way, and they brought us in when they needed to do shooting, and it's kept me young, it's kept me hungry, and I'm just looking forward to learning more about the game, but from the other side of it.
Talking about concussion subs, Brendan, I'm glad you knew the rule with concussion subs recently, because the supporters were all shouting that you were bringing on a 6th substitute, and you'd already done your 5, so thankfully you knew the rule. But the evolution of a goalkeeper, it's probably the position that has changed more than other individual positions in about the last 10 years or so.
Well, there's no doubt. I think I became a manager in 2008, and then it was starting to sort of play a big part really in being a top goalkeeper. Really, I think that you've seen it throughout. That, as Joe said, goalkeeper's there to make saves, and if it's kicked up the other end of the pitch, then there's no danger. But the game was starting to become that, and obviously it's grown and developed now, and you go down through the leagues and you go to lower levels in the football pyramid, and you'll see all goalkeepers trying to play out. But I think it's a big testament to Joe, like I said, his capacity to learn, but not just learn, but obviously want to learn. And you see him now, you'll find him midway through our half, and that confidence that he has in stepping out and creating that triangle that we try and play with. That's, you know, that could be so easy for him just to be rooted to his line, but he wants to be a part of that, which is absolutely brilliant. The one thing I will add, obviously you mentioned about Livingston. He clearly hadn't played in Hamilton. That might have just overtaken Livingston, Cal. Hamilton away, when you see that big Morrison's or whatever it is. That was also a great memory.
Joe, before we finish up, we've got one final contributor. It's a bit like This Is Your Life, isn't it, when you get the big guest at the end. We couldn't do an evening devoted to Joe Hart without speaking to your great friend Micah Richards. Micah was at City, of course, when you arrived. Before all the big money, you immediately struck up a friendship that's lasted the test of time. Now, unfortunately, Micah couldn't come up. He tried his best to come up for this, but he had other media commitments. But he did give me a bit of time through the week to talk about Joe.
What can I say about Joe? He's quite shy. I mean, he come from Shrewsbury. Obviously, he come with a very good reputation of a very good young goalkeeper, but he had to prove himself. And I remember very fondly, I wanted to get him settled in. So back then, I was the man about the town in Manchester. I used to go out a little bit too much, I'm not going to lie, but I really enjoyed it. And one night, I took out Joe just to, settle the nerves and whatnot. With a place called Sugar Lounge back in the day. He'll remember exactly what I mean. He's probably smiling right now. And basically, he rang me around 10:30 and said, "Meeks, where are you?" I said, "Oh, I'm just 5 minutes away." It got to about 11:15. "Meeks, I thought you was around the corner." I said, "Joe, I can see, I'm just at the end of the road." It got to about 11:30, and I just turned up. I hadn't even left my house. And any other person in that moment would have just left and sort of just been like, who does this guy think he is? I'm not waiting around. But it just showed you the measure of the man and how humble he was. And basically, okay, this is how it is. I'm going to get you back one day. And he waited for me for about an hour outside the club, freezing, a young Joe Hart. And that is how I introduced him to Manchester City. But he was just so humble with it. And ever since that day, we just got a stronger and stronger bond. And he was just an amazing character, really was.
How important was Joe to the success of that Manchester City squad?
Joe, when it comes to importance, his character in the dressing room. And when I first met him, he was shy and you could see he had personality and character. But every season he grew and he grew. And don't forget, he wasn't playing at the start. He went on loan to Birmingham, was outstanding for Birmingham, come back. And you just see he grew in stature. He would start talking in the dressing room. One thing I would say about Joe Hart, he was dedicated, he was humble, and he was inspirational. Them three things, when it comes to Joe Hart, is what I think about. Because even when, I would say, his back's against the wall, he would always find a way to rise to the top. And that's the biggest compliment. He had all the talent in the world, but it was his mindset that was completely different to a lot of footballers that I'd played with. It was incredible.
Yeah, we've seen that in the time that Joe's been here at the club. What have you made of his time at Celtic? Because Joe's spoken openly about, before he came here, he felt a bit disillusioned with the game, didn't know whether he would have another big club or more success. I mean, he's loved his time at Celtic and we've loved having him here. Have you been watching on from the sidelines?
Yeah, I watch all the time, Joe. And I think before he went to Celtic, and we know the size of the club. It's a club I loved when I was younger because of Henrik Larsson. And now, obviously, I've worked with Chris Sutton as well. So I've always had an eye on Celtic. But when Joe went there, I remember him speaking to me before he went, and basically he just said he wanted to feel loved. You know, he went through a time where things were not going the way he wanted, but he wasn't going to give up. Go to Celtic, big club, play games, and that's exactly what he's done. Go there and win things and feel important, because when you're a human being, forget footballer for a minute, you basically want to feel valued, and he felt valued from day one. And you know what? I'm gutted. He's calling it a day at the end of the season, because he's still got more to go. But I'm just happy he's doing it on his own terms, you know.
Just finally, Micah, Joe's in the room, of course, so I know he can't talk back to you, but you can maybe say to him, we're here to pay tribute to Joe. Is there anything you'd like to say to him? Joe,
I would just like to say, you are a true inspiration. I don't want to sound cringy. I don't want to sound, go over the top too much, but to see the progress that you've made, not just as a footballer, but as a man, you've evolved, and it's quite emotional when you obviously said the news a couple of months ago now that you would be retiring. It did get me a little bit emotional, but it made me happy at the same time that you're doing it on your terms, and you've done absolutely everything. It's going to be a massive loss to the game, not just football in general, but the changing rooms, the laughter, the banter, the character. So I would just like to say from the bottom of my heart, congratulations on an unbelievable career. And, your life doesn't stop now. You've got many years to go. So all the best. And yeah, you deserve everything you get.
Micah, Joe said he didn't want to get too emotional and over the top, but he then went to the CBS studio that night to do a Champions League game. I was in my kitchen and I got a video from Micah Richards, and this is what he sent.
Big Dog Joe Hart, I love you. I just want to say a message from the CBS team. Congratulations and all the best.
All the best on a great career, Joe. Fantastic goalkeeper, lad, and great lad as well. All the best, mate.
All the very best. Enjoy. New life.
Yes, sir. Congratulations.
No one does it like CBS, baby.
He's some man, Micah.
He's wild. Hey, look, there's two sides to that guy, and he's showing it there. I only had to wait for him because I couldn't get in a club without him. That's all I wanted to get in that VT there. But, yeah, he's a friend more than anything. He's a close friend and someone that I love dearly, and I'm very happy with him obviously finishing his career not on his terms, and he's done all right, hasn't he?
He certainly has, yeah. Let me ask you, we've gone into added on time, so let me ask each of you a question to finish, because I want to bring it back to the here and now, Joe, because I know you're keen to concentrate on the football and get the message out that there's still plenty of work to do. So, Brendan, let me speak to you first of all. With the season left, you know exactly what you have to do, the games that are to be played. How confident are you that with this squad, including Callum and Joe, that you can achieve what you set out to do?
Very confident. I think I get that confidence from what I see every single day. The guys, absolutely amazing how they train, how they prepare, such an honest group, and we'll go into this last part of the season. Like I said, during the week, this is where we'll come alive, and we're looking forward to it.
Callum, we know, of course, we have got a Glasgow Derby Cup final to come, but every game will probably feel like a cup final. So I know there's a lot of preparation and recovery. But how good is it for you to know that you've got someone like Joe there in the dressing room, helping you and the boys achieve what you want to achieve?
Yeah, brilliant. You take great comfort in that. But the one thing we have to do is stay focused and stay calm, and that's where we have to be. We have to see the picture clearly. We have to train properly every day, and then when we get the chance to go and play these games, we have to give everything, and I'm sure if we do that, then we'll give the big guy the send-off that he deserves.
And Joe, the final word from you. You have got absolutely nothing to prove to anybody at any club you've been to or here at Celtic, but I'm sure you still feel that you've got more to achieve. There's a lot more that you can achieve in the next few weeks. How will you go about preparing yourself for these games, knowing that your retirement is at the end of it?
In exactly the same way that, you know, both the manager and Callum have spoke. Me ending my career was done. That's why I spoke however many weeks ago. We've got a job to do. We've got a club to represent. We've got people to make smile, and we're going to do that by hard work, dedication, trusting each other, sticking together as a football team and as a group and as a special club. And look, we've just got to give it our all, like we do. I think that's one of our real strong qualities. We leave it all out there, and it's going to be no different.
Absolutely, and I think you can all agree that with these three guys up on the stage leading the charge, that we're in a very, very good place. But tonight we're here to pay tribute to Joe Hart and all he's done in his career, particularly here at Celtic in the last 3 seasons. Thanks to Brendan Rodgers, thanks to Callum McGregor, but a very special thanks, ladies and gentlemen, to the one and only Super Joe Hart.